Well, Israel has said that it's preparing to evacuate Palestinians from the southern Gazan city of Rafah and launch its long-awaited offensive there. The Israeli government claims that the bulk of Hamas's remaining forces are hiding out in Rafah. The Islamist militant group Hamas carried out the October 7th terror attacks that triggered the war. Over 1 million internally displaced Gazans are now living in Rafah. Media reports say Israel has erected 40,000 tents to accommodate those who will be forced to move again once it begins its assault. But this has yet to be officially confirmed. Satellite images show collections of tents that were not there earlier this month. Now let's pick up on that with our correspondent Rebecca Ritters in Jerusalem. Rebecca, there are reports that Israel is now planning to carry out an offensive in Rafah in stages. Does that mean Israel is scaling back its original plan for a full-scale offensive?
That's very difficult to say. Israel not giving away exactly what they plan to do, but it is indeed, all indications point to Israel pushing ahead with its planned offensive of Rafah. They've said so themselves. Yesterday, the Israeli military confirmed that at least the two reserve battalions that were called up to prepare for this imminent offensive, that they were indeed ready and they were just waiting for a political green light. There are also reports yesterday that some very senior Israeli officials were in Egypt to talk to their Egyptian counterparts about this planned offensive. Obviously, Rafah's proximity to the Egyptian border makes it slightly different to some of the other offensive we've seen in Gaza so far. And so they were reportedly there to discuss their plans with the Egyptian authorities. When you talk about this phased plan, that is what we're hearing, although I'll reiterate that we don't have confirmation from Israel exactly what their plans are, but this is what we're hearing, that there is a kind of planned phase. We know that the US have been putting on pressure for weeks particularly, but also others, including Germany, to try to prevent the worst of a humanitarian catastrophe that would come with going into Rafah in a ground offensive with more than 1 million people sheltering there. So it does certainly appear, and that's what we're hearing, that this planned phased offensive is to try to evacuate many of the civilians that are there. We're hearing that it could take some weeks. So though this offensive is due to begin, is largely expected, it could take some weeks yet, Terry.
Now, satellite images are circulating that show new tent encampments in southern Gaza. Would those tents, Rebecca, be enough to accommodate an evacuation of Rafah?
Well, we think we're talking around about 40,000 tents. That's because we've heard that Israel have procured 40,000 tents. They haven't given any acknowledgement, or they haven't commented on whether or not these tent encampments that we're seeing via the satellite imagery is their work. We're also getting reports that they're being erected by Egyptians and the UAE, but of course, with the approval and the coordination of the Israelis. We're talking about 40,000 tents so far. We're talking about 1 million or more than 1 million people in Rafah. I'll leave you to do the maths on that one. I don't think we're going to see a full evacuation of Rafah, but also we're getting a lot of reports on the ground that civilians who are just exhausted from having moved sometimes up to 5, 6 other times as they gradually have come down the strip from the north, being evacuated into various different positions, that they're just exhausted and they simply, we've heard from so many people saying that they're willing to just die in Rafah, that they don't want to evacuate anymore. So we are hearing that this is going to be a slightly different offensive than the ones that we've seen, perhaps more targeted in order to try to comply by those US and other allied demands to not cause such a humanitarian catastrophe and to try to keep civilian casualties to a minimum. But as I say, this could take some weeks. We are talking about more than 1 million people, and just where they're all going to go really remains to be seen, Terry.
Rebecca, thank you very much as always. Our correspondent Rebecca Ritters there in Jerusalem.